Mr. Speaker.
Andrew Little.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I agree with the Deputy Prime Minister and aspiring Prime Minister about one thing at least, and that is that on the occasion of the resignation of the Prime Minister, it is appropriate to be generous in one's offerings about not only the departing Prime Minister but one's colleagues in Parliament. But the aspiring Prime Minister couldn't even do that. It didn't take long for Mr. English to descend into the usual bitter, angry, nasty tirade that he is reputed for. Mr. Speaker, Harold Macmillan said in answer to the question, what do governments most fear? He said, events, dear boy, events. And yesterday we had an event, and today we have seen the faces of the government, and they are unfair. They are unfair. They don't know what's going to happen. They don't know who's going to win, and they don't know what the outcome is going to be. And so, Mr. Speaker, on the occasion of the resignation of the Prime Minister, who has served for 8 years, let us acknowledge that that is a significant event constitutionally, politically, and in a variety of other ways. Let's accept that serving in high public office is tough. Let's also recall that having checks and balances in our constitutional system is meant to constrain, and being under daily, if not hourly, scrutiny is meant to enlighten and call to account. And that is our system. That's what makes it tough, but it is tough. It is right sometimes to put political differences aside and say to a political opponent, thank you for the service that you have given to our country. It's not for me to conduct some sort of panegyric. That is for the historians, the real historians, who will have the benefit of the distance of time at some point in the future to decide what John Key's legacy is and how that has served New Zealand. But I just say that it is right for the House to acknowledge the leadership that John Key has given over the last 8 years. But right now, in present circumstances, who replaces John Key is a question only for the National Party. They sit over there. It's their choice. It's not necessarily what New Zealanders expected. They expect that having elected someone or a party to government with a Prime Minister, they would serve out the full term. But now that is a matter entirely in the hands of the National Caucus. One thing remains unchanged throughout all of this, and that is that too many New Zealanders are still missing out. You know, John Key, who was quoted in a Listener article in June this year, and he said this, voters only really care about 4 things: health, education, law and order, and the economy. So, let's have a look at health, education, law and order, and the economy. Because, Mr. Speaker, the track record ain't that flattering. So when we have a look at health, $1.7 billion cut effectively from the health budget. The health budget that has failed to keep up with population growth and a changing population profile. 45,000 New Zealanders, mainly elderly New Zealanders, last year alone, who were told by their GPs, you need hospital treatment. Skedaddle up there quickly, get up to your hospital and get your treatment done. And they turned up to their local hospital and the hospital said, we can't afford to treat you. That's what they were told. 45,000 New Zealanders who needed hips replaced, knees done, other minor surgeries. We have a health system that can no longer afford to treat New Zealanders when they need it. We've got surgeons now being told by their hospital management, don't do follow-up appointments. What's that about? How can you have surgery and not have a follow-up appointment to see how it's going, to see whether there's an infection, to see whether you need other treatment? That's the state of health in New Zealand today. And, Mr. Speaker, it ain't good enough. That was health. What about education? Well, what we've seen now is a freeze on education funding. Schools struggling to do the job we expect of them, struggling to give our kids a chance to succeed in a rapidly changing world. And we saw the report last week, the Timms report, that sees New Zealand going backwards. Larger class sizes, more pressure on teachers, and would you believe a freeze in funding? How does that happen? With a government that says to New Zealanders it's committed to a brave new world of the future, but won't give a chance, won't give opportunity to New Zealanders, young New Zealanders, when they need it. So what about law and order? So at a time of the most rapidly growing population in New Zealand, and at a time when crime is rising, now 2 years in a row, burglaries, assaults, robberies, serious crime, we have a freeze on police numbers. We have declining police morale. How does that work in a country that's on the cusp of something special? And Mr. Speaker, then there is the economy. There is the economy. How is it that in this great economy of ours, and that the Minister of Finance and Deputy Prime Minister says is now burgeoning and doing well, 1 out of every 5 wage and salary earners, get that, 1 out of 5, do not earn enough, or at least only earn enough. That means that more than 50% of their income goes on either paying their rent or the mortgage. That's how expensive the cost of living has become. That's why so many families are struggling. Working families, people out there toiling away, trying to get every hour of work they can, terrified when they have to renew the warrant of fitness, because they're terrified they might have to replace the tyres or the brake linings. Terrified when that winter power bill comes, because they don't know how many $100 bigger it was than the summer ones. That's the lived existence of too many New Zealand families these days. That's not a successful economy, Mr. Speaker. That's not successful in New Zealand. Mr. Speaker, Labor has a plan and Labor is ready. Labor has a plan for New Zealand. We're going to build houses for all those New Zealanders who don't have their own roof over their heads, the 41,000 homeless. Labor has a plan. For the thousands of young couples who can't afford to buy their own home, Labor has a plan. We're going to put you in a home. You're going to be able to afford to buy your own home. For the parents wondering how much more they're going to have to fork out for their kids at school, we've got a plan. We're going to restore that funding for education, and we're going to have an education system that is modern and fit and equipped for the modern world. Mr. Speaker, Labor has a plan for health, and it is about restoring that funding. We won't be able to do it straight away, but we will over time put back that funding so that if you're elderly and your hips are given out, you can't walk and you can't do the shopping, we'll give you a chance. You'll get your hip operation. You will live a decent life, a dignified life, because that's what New Zealand stands for. Mr. Speaker, Labor has a plan. We have a plan for law and order. We'll put more police on the beat. We're going to put an extra 1,000 cops over 3 years, and New Zealanders will feel safe in their communities again. That's our pledge. We've costed it out. We can do it. The government could do it now. I want to give you a bet. I'm prepared to put money on it, that between now and the next election, the next Prime Minister, whoever that may be, will announce they'll put more cops on the beat, because they know they got it wrong. Because the truth is, this is a government that is out of touch, arrogant, tired, they've lost touch, they don't know what to do anymore. Everything they do now is responding to Labor's plan to lift New Zealand and make it better. Mr. Speaker, here's the thing. Here's the thing. We are a country that has always celebrated the chance for its people to get ahead. When you do the right thing, when you work hard and you pay your taxes, the least you expect is the government to be there to back you, to make sure you can have a roof over your head, that if you can't afford to buy one, that if you can't afford to rent one, there's a Housing New Zealand house there for you, not being sold down the river by the current Minister in charge of Housing New Zealand. Right. We are a country that believes that if you do all the right things, we'll have an education system there that'll make sure your kids are prepared for success. We're a country that believes if you want a chance to get ahead, to do well, to work well, we'll have a health system there that's there to make you get better when you fall sick. That's what we stand for. That's what New Zealand's about. We are a land of opportunity. We've always celebrated that, but for far too many New Zealanders, that opportunity is going. Mr. Speaker, we can do better. And Labor is about a better New Zealand. It is about harnessing the resources of government, of backing our people, of backing them in their dreams and their ambitions for themselves, their children, their families, for their communities. Labor is about stronger families and better communities. That's what we're going to go to the country on next year. Mr. Speaker, Labor has a plan and Labor is ready. We've known this was going to come. We've been prepared for this. Doesn't matter when the election is. We have a plan for New Zealand. New Zealand deserves better. Mr. Speaker, they're going to get better, and New Zealand is going to be a great country with Labor backing hard-working Kiwis every step of the way.
Mr. Speaker.